Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining us on today's webinar. We're going to get started in just a moment, but as I see more people joining us, our numbers are increasing here. We're going to wait for some more friends to join us. So in the meantime, go ahead and share in chat. Where are you joining in from and what's your superpower? So I will start. I'm joining in from Oakland, California, and my superpower is resiliency. So let us know where you're joining in from and what's your superpower over in chat. And I'll read some of those out in just a bit here. We've got Mary Ellen from Washington, D.C. Superpower is networking. Diane from Denver, superpower, Jackie of all trades. Yes, yes. We have Karen from San Jose who says her superpower is tenaciousness. Rochelle says her superpower is flexibility. We have Veronica from San Francisco. Her superpower is throwing food up really high in the air and catching it in my mouth. Yes, that is a very entertaining superpower to have for sure. Hi, Juana from Santa Ana. You say your superpower is compassion. Love it. Corey from Iowa. I can move mountains. Need more of that. Addie from Norfolk, Virginia. Superpower is age. Heck yes. We've got Gigi from Los Angeles and loving change. Tina from, let's see, we don't have a location, but you say your superpower is raising 5 children. Snap, 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 all the way. That is a superpower to the core. Excellent. I love seeing these. Thank you so much for being here with us. So again, I'm Nicole Jones from TechSoup. Thank you for sharing with us where you're tuning in from and what your superpower is. I feel like we are surrounded by some pretty super friends here with us. So on today's webinar, we're going to talk about how to delight donors with design tips from Adobe Spark. End of year fundraising is certainly top of mind for most of us. And so I'm super excited that we have a fabulous guest speaker with us, who I'm going to introduce in just a bit here. And she's going to walk you through some design tips to help you make the most out of your nonprofit end of year fundraising on social media. But before we get there, a little bit of housekeeping. I'm sure you've noticed that your line is muted, so you're not able to talk out loud, but you can still talk and chat. So use it as your water cooler, as our water cooler, to share other tips, to share resources. But if you have a question, I ask that you move it on over to the Q&A feature of your Zoom panel. You'll see 2 message bubbles, and that's the best place to ask your questions. You'll also get to see other attendee questions there, and you'll get to upvote for your favorite one. So that'll help us decide which questions we should answer first. So make sure you head on over there throughout the presentation to see other questions that are being asked and to upvote for your favorite ones. Lastly, you're going to receive an email with this presentation. You'll get the slides, a copy of the slide deck, in addition to a recording to this webinar and any resource links that we shared along the way. So if you missed anything, you want to go back and watch anything, we've got you covered. Okay, with that out of the way, if you're new to TechSoup, welcome. It's so great to have you here. So TechSoup is a global network bridging tech solutions and services for good. What that means is we equip changemakers with transformative technology solutions and skills that they need to improve lives globally and locally. So a lot of people know us for offering discounts on the tools that nonprofits need most, but we also provide support, training, community, and much more to help over 1 million nonprofits around the world. So you can learn more about TechSoup by heading on over to TechSoup.org. And now on to the good stuff. So introductions. Once again, I'm Nicole Jones from TechSoup, and today our distinguished presenter is Veronica Belmont. Veronica is a product manager, podcaster, and technology evangelist living in San Francisco. And at Adobe, she's a product manager and evangelist on the Adobe Spark team, where she helps social media creators, marketers, and influencers bring their brands and creative ideas to the masses. Veronica has also worked extensively as a public speaker, startup advisor, and presenter for companies of all sizes, including IBM, Intel, Sony, AOL, Discovery Digital, and much more. We are super lucky to have her here. Welcome, Veronica. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I love TechSoup's mission, and I'm always happy to work with your team and get to work with all the fantastic people who are joining us here for our webinar today. All right, let me start sharing my screen. Mind if I take over from you?
All yours.
Here we go. All right, so let me know if you see my screen. Hopefully everything will be up and looking good. Let's share. Okay. How's that? Can you see my title screen?
Coming in nice and crisp.
Perfect. So as Nicole mentioned, I'm a PM and evangelist on the Adobe Spark team. I've been with Spark for about 2.5 years or so, and it's a fantastic product. As Nicole mentioned, I've worked with a lot of startups throughout the years. I've worked with a lot of small and medium businesses, and one story that keeps coming back time and time again is people have a hard time talking about themselves online. You know, whether it's their personal brand or whether it's their small business or their side hustle or even a nonprofit, being able to figure out ways to share your story visually and get people noticing your brand and getting people excited about the message and the mission that you have is really difficult, especially when there's so many different social media platforms out there, so many different ways to engage. So today we're going to really try to focus and narrow in on your end of your fundraising goals and how you can use social media and Spark in particular to help maximize those efforts, especially coming into the holiday season. And especially during this really unusual time that we're living in right now, where people are feeling a little unsure about things. So, you know, between Giving Tuesday, fundraising galas, last minute donations, and annual appeals, you know, the end of the year can be incredibly difficult to navigate. But it's also by far the most important fundraising season, as you all know. So Adobe Spark is really going to help you kind of leverage these tools where you can create easy assets to make campaigns, to share on social, and be executed across multiple different kinds of channels. So when we talk about channels, we're talking about, of course, email campaigns, we're talking about web campaigns, social campaigns. All of these come together to really tell a cohesive story. So we want to be able to first increase engagement and build that brand awareness. Things like well-researched hashtags have the power to really attract like-minded individuals and followers that can help grow your reach and really reinforce your story and your mission behind your organization. And then those campaigns. So do you have a fundraising goal? Are you promoting an upcoming event, for example? Those hashtags are going to really generate a lot of excitement and boost involvement from your followers across your social platforms. So, you know, it's important to call out that there's even more pressure right now for nonprofits to make fundraising goals this year with the economic hardships and that their donors and their community overall are really experiencing. You know, it's a problem across the board, but you still have a really important message to share and to get out there. And it's more important and more vital than ever to really make a difference. So incorporating things like testimonials and stats on the impact that your nonprofit or your foundation is making is going to be especially vital going into this year and next. So we've got some fundraising do's and don'ts here, just a little snapshot of some things to really get you started. And as a reminder, of course, please continue asking questions in the chat. My colleague Emily from the Spark team is going to be in there. She'll be able to answer any questions that you may have as I go on through the presentation. And Emily, feel free to interrupt me if there's anything particular that I'm talking about that has a relevant question too. Happy to stop down and take a question if it's particular to a slide that we're discussing. And don't worry, I am going to go into a demo of Spark a little bit later in the presentation as well. So if you're seeing some of these results and wondering, okay, great, well, how do I actually do that? Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to make it all happen a little bit later in the presentation. And of course, at the end of the presentation, we'll have links and resources for you to follow, so you can definitely get off on Spark with the right foot. So back to the presentation, end of the year fundraising goals. Don't just rely on snail mail outreach. Like we said, it's an important piece of the overall campaign, but you can potentially miss out on a really big piece of the fundraising pie. Do send your appeal campaign across email using Spark Page, or create a MailChimp banner and Spark Post to design. We really love Spark Page because it's a fantastic way to get out a message and have it, you don't have to worry about domains. You don't have to worry about setting up anything in fancy systems. You just create a beautiful splash page that's going to have all the information that your donors need, with all the CTA buttons that they need to follow through on actually making contributions, all with Spark. So we'll walk through that a little bit later in the presentation as well. Do create a series of compelling social graphics to really talk about your end of the year goals. And we're going to talk about a little bit in the best practices section, how to really make the most out of your imagery and save the copy, save the text for the comments of the post, rather than putting a lot of text in the actual image. And also, do make sure you thank your community and show them how they are making an impact for your cause. This is something that we talk to a bunch of small, medium businesses, personal brands. Always have that engagement, always keep that conversation going, because that's really putting the social in social media. You want to be able to have that engagement because people are going to feel more personally attached to your brand. They're going to feel like they're having an impact on the work that you're doing, and they're going to feel more personally responsible for your success as well. And that's an incredible benefit to social media. So creating a compelling social narrative, and don't worry, there's a lot of text on these particular posts, but we're going to share out this presentation at the end, so don't feel like you have to read everything as I go on. Make sure all your nonprofit social media followers are aware of your end of year campaign by starting early on posting these appeals. I think a lot of people who don't work in the nonprofit space don't understand how important end of the year fundraising actually is for so many nonprofits. So make that clear in your messaging. Make sure that they understand that it's time for a big boost, that it's a great time to raise awareness, and people are in the spirit of giving at this time of year, so it can definitely help. Highly visual mediums, things like photos and videos, are really going to stand out in social feeds. It's not enough to just put a wall of text on Twitter or on LinkedIn. You want to have a piece of imagery or a piece of moving graphics, something that's going to capture a reader's eyes as they're scrolling through their social feed. I can't remember exactly how short it is. It's something like 7 milliseconds. It's ridiculously short, but that's how much time you have to actually grab someone's attention as they're thumbing through their social feed, whether it be on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. You want to have the kind of content that's going to stand out, be recognizable that it's coming from your brand or nonprofit, and grab their attention for enough time that they actually pay attention to the message that you're trying to send. And then finally, having real world examples, quotes from real people, testimonials like we mentioned earlier. These kinds of things are going to really drive the purpose of your organization and grab people's attention and make them feel like they can actually have a big impact. So that's going to be really helpful. Data speaks volumes. So being able to have that on hand and incorporating that information into visual graphics as part of your overall narrative is going to give you a really big boost as well. So I mentioned
Veronica,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Before you move on, we have a great question from Erin Shields. Erin says, I'm at a small museum in a community of mostly retirees. Any suggestions on how to convince everyone that digital communication is just as important?
So are you trying to reach the, well, yeah, I guess I have a few more questions as a follow-up myself. So you work at a small museum in a community of mostly retirees. So are you trying to reach the retirees via social, or are you trying to, I guess that's my question, because that is, if that's your core audience, that might be a little more difficult. I would be interested to know what social media platforms they're using the most. Different demographics definitely focus on different kinds of social platforms. My assumption, I don't know this off the top of my head, but this is just based on my experience. The older generations, boomers, et cetera, typically gravitate more towards Facebook versus a Twitter or an Instagram. So one of the things that you can do, and we were going to jump into this about in the multi-channel section that I was going to touch on next, is figuring out where your audience is and maximizing your work time for that specific platform. And so I would say in this case, is there a Facebook group for your neighborhood? Is Nextdoor potentially a good option for you? That's another great community platform where potentially people of an older generation are going to be spending more time versus an Instagram or a TikTok, for example. Not trying to make sweeping generalizations, of course. People of all different ages and backgrounds use all sorts of different platforms for different purposes. But I think in general, typically, we are seeing an older audience on the Facebook, on the Nextdoors of the world. So if you can kind of validate that with your community, get some qualitative data around that, like maybe do an informal survey of the people in your area and figure out like, okay, what platform are you on the most? Where do you get your information from? That way you can start focusing your fundraising goals around that specific platform. So Emily, hopefully that helps with her question. But let me know if there's any follow-ups to that, and we can dig more into it later in the presentation as well. So multi-channel. So as I mentioned, there are a ton of different social media channels out there, and you definitely want to spread your message across as many of them as you can, but also while recognizing that different nonprofits are going to have different core audiences who are receptive to your message. So it's this balance of figuring out where the most users are versus making sure that people recognize your brand and your nonprofit across a lot of different kinds of channels. So cross-posting is fine. This is something that I think is probably the lowest bar for what you can do. In this example for the San Francisco Marin Food Bank, who I absolutely adore and worked with regularly before COVID hit, obviously, they do multi-channel posting. They kind of take their content and post it across multiple different platforms, but they don't tweak it too much. In the not nonprofit world, Nike actually does a really fantastic job. They're kind of like the antithesis of a nonprofit, actually. But as an example, it works, trust me. They really tailor their content across different types of platforms. So for example, on LinkedIn, they talk about what their employees are doing. They talk about what a great place to work Nike is. And so they're kind of featuring different employees that work at their offices and building up that story across LinkedIn. But then on Facebook, which is much more communicative, there's a lot more engagement and back and forth, they do bigger posts where they are looking for feedback, for example. So that's a really good example of kind of taking different platforms and optimizing for what they're best at. And of course, as I mentioned, social is the conversation. Social is the whole point of social media. So don't let your engagement lag behind. People are there, they want to talk to you, they want to ask questions, they want to get to know what your mission is and who the people working for your team are. So engage them in that conversation. I think it's super important to spend a small amount of time every day checking your social channels, making sure there's conversation happening in there, making sure you're engaging, answering questions, talking back and forth. This is sometimes underutilized, but at the end of the day, it's really, really important that you take the time to do that. Even if you don't have a specific person dedicated to that, I think anyone can really jump in and be that voice. That brings me to another kind of interesting, discovery that we made a while back. I was doing a presentation like this for a small startup incubator, and we asked who was responsible for social at their company. And I was blown away by the diversity of different roles that were taking over social for their company. It was all the way from like the intern to people in marketing, which makes sense. The accountant was the one that really got to me. The accountant was the only person who was making the time to actually do the social media for their particular startup. So it just goes to show that, you don't have to necessarily have someone who that's their title, but if everyone understands how important it is, then everyone can put a little time in every day to just make sure that those conversations are happening. So here's some quick steps to some multi-channel content, and we're going to jump into this with a demo in a little bit as well. So once you're familiar with Spark, you'll get into these workflows that are really going to help you maximize your time to create content. So we want to minimize the amount of time, rather, that it takes to go from like the idea for a campaign to actually getting content out there across social platforms. And so the combination of duplicating projects and then using the resize feature is one of the best ways to kind of make content for multiple platforms just at the touch of a button. So let me actually jump into the demo of this, and I'm going to switch my tab over to Spark. So Emily, give me a shout out if you do not see Spark on the screen, but I think we should be in good shape.
I'm seeing Spark, looks great.
Awesome. So this is Spark on the web. I'm looking over here because my screen's over on this side. This is Spark on the web. You can get to it at spark.adobe.com. Of course, we have free accounts, and we'll talk more about what TechSoup members can also get through Spark. And so this is kind of where your starting point is. And at the top here, you can jump into blank slates, essentially, for different social platform sizes. So we take care of all of that work for you. You don't have to know what the aspect ratio is for Twitter or for Facebook posts or for LinkedIn. We've got you covered there completely. You can even do custom size projects. So if you have like a printout that you want to create, or a card or something like that, you can put in your own dimensions and then print as a PDF, and it's going to look fantastic. But I started with this post here. As you can see, I've already made some duplicates. I'm actually going to delete this one and start over so you can see what it looks like from the beginning. So I've been working on this color theory post here, and now I want to be able to make a duplicate of it, because this is a square size that's really great for Instagram and a couple other platforms, but I want something a little bit different. Oh, darn, I clicked on it. That's okay. So normally what I would do is I would duplicate it from that home screen and then jump into the new project, but I'll actually show you from the editor window how this is going to look. So once I've duplicated my project, now I've got, this is my editor window here. Of course, I can click on any text. I can change this to, let's see, Thanksgiving, intro to Thanksgiving. Super easy. You just delete this out. Enter. Term. Thanksgiving. Fundraising. There we go. Okay, great. So now I've got my image, and now I'm going to head over here on the right-hand side to resize. And now this is going to give me all the different aspect ratios for different social platforms. So if I want to turn this into an Instagram story, just at one snap, Instagram portrait, Instagram landscape, Facebook, Pinterest, you get the idea. So with just a couple little tweaks, if I want it to be 100% perfect, that's all it takes. And so now I've got this great post. I can hop in here. I can start adding some animation, text animation, for example. And once I export this out to Instagram, I would want to add my swipe up graphic or something like that to get people to go to my CTA, for example, or actually go to my page. Most of you probably have like a business or a corporation account through Instagram where you're able to add links to your posts. That's going to be super key to drive engagement and actually see some metrics around what's working and what's not. We'll talk a little bit more about those kinds of systems that allow you to see your engagement over time so you know what's working a little bit later as well. So yeah, play around with what works best for you. I love typewriter or Flickr. These are the kinds of things that I'm talking about that are going to grab people's attention as they're scrolling through their social media feeds. And then once I'm done with my particular project, I can download it. This would be a video because we're adding animations. You would want to download this as an MP4 file. But if I wanted to go back to just a traditional JPEG or a PNG for higher quality, I can do that. And then of course, PDF is going to be really great if you're printing out flyers or things for special events. So I would just start that download, it would save it to my hard drive, and I would be good to go. Let me jump back here to my presentation. Great. So we mentioned a little bit earlier about newsletters and these annual appeal letters. So using Spark Page is going to be a really great way to get that message out there. Spark Page is a little bit different from Spark Post. If you're of the generation that I'm of, you may be familiar with the term WYSIWYG editor. That's what you see is what you get. And it's just a really great, easy way to create web content without needing to know HTML or CSS or any of the other kind of web programming languages. So Spark makes it easy to just basically take content and start adding images, videos, texts, change the layout, publish it, and then be able to see how many people are engaging with that content. And we generate a link for you, so you don't have to work with domain providers. You just get an automatic link that you can send out in emails or post on social that people can go to right away. And it looks really, really good. So this is an example of Bandit. I'm actually going to show you the full version here of what it looks like on Spark Page. And Emily actually made this page for Bandit. It was in collaboration with the VCA, which is the, Emily, what does that stand for again? The Veterinary Association of California?
Yeah. So this was as I'm part of a nonprofit board in my other life outside of Adobe, and this was a collaboration with VCA in San Francisco, who took care of this dog. So this is a page I created to talk about Bandit's story and our organizational mission as a nonprofit.
Yeah, and it did really well, which is awesome. But as you can see here, just by adding some images and some text, Emily was able to put together this really beautiful visual story that updated all of the benefactors of the organization about this dog's particular progress and how much they actually helped over time. And so this looks a lot nicer than like just a typical email or a Facebook post. And of course, you can click into any of these images, which is really nice. And it acts just like a fully functional web page. And at the bottom here, Emily could also add a button that would actually be like a CTA, where you could say like, okay, great, now you've read this story, help us save more dogs, help us help other animals out there. And that button could then take you to whatever fundraising platform you're using. So like I said, this kind of thing, Emily, how long would you say that this particular kind of project would have taken you?
It was very fast, and I imagine that most of the people on this call, you have to create a newsletter or end of year appeal that you're going to be sending, via snail mail. So basically, what we did in our organization is we copied and all of that content that we were going to include in our letter to our supporters. I just copied and pasted it into Page, added a couple photos. I'd say from start to finish, it probably took me half an hour just because I wanted it to look a certain way and just kind of played around with it a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very easy to do. And, again, to Veronica's point earlier, this is part of our, trying to reach a larger audience and not just rely on the mail, because sometimes these things end up in the recycling bin. We were able to get a lot more eyes on it by creating a page that we shared over email and also on Facebook.
Excellent. And I promise I won't mess up your project, because I know this is actually something you send out to people, but I did want to show just how easy it is to add new content into a Spark page. So this is the editable version of the project that Emily published. And here you can see, just by clicking any of the plus buttons on Spark Page, you can add any kind of content you want. You can change the layout, you can make a glide show, you can make a photo grid. And so, and even YouTube videos, YouTube, Vimeo, or Spark video posts can be embedded into Spark Pages as well. So you can really use it as like a hub for updating people on what's been going on with your organization throughout the past year. I'm not gonna mess with it because it's doing really well. So I'll switch back without touching anything, and we'll continue on with the presentation. Awesome, Emily, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. And Veronica, very quickly, there is a question I think that we should answer now, which is,
Sure.
what do these URLs for these links look like? And the attendee says, since they wouldn't have the domain of your organization's website, I'd worry recipients of emails might not trust those links.
Yeah, I think you can, so the emails, they say they're from Adobe. I mean, rather the links are Adobe links. So they don't just look completely out of the blue, but they are not customizable. So that is one thing to recognize. But I think if the links are coming from an email that you're sending out and it has the link added to text, for example. So if you say, view Bandit story here and then link to it from that text, it's going to look a lot better than if you just put a long link like in an email or share that out. Also, we have previews to the Spark projects as well. So you can actually embed it into an email if they support HTML embeds. So that way your users can actually see the project ahead of clicking into it. So that's useful too. But I totally understand that feeling. It's a feature that we've had requested of Spark Page for a really long time that I don't think is going to be happening within the next year or so, unfortunately, but I think there's definitely ways that you can work around with it. You can also use bit.ly links. So if you're familiar with bit.ly or other URL shorteners, you can make custom names for the links that you're sharing out. So that's typically what we do on the Spark team, especially when we're doing presentations like this and we don't want to have a really long link URL that people are going to not remember. We'll do things like, bit.ly bit.ly/Spark playbooks, for example, and that usually helps.
Yeah, that's really good feedback on how to use it. And also one more question, which is from Andrea. How long do these domains last? For example, when will Bandit Story go offline, and are we in control of that, or does Adobe determine the time?
It will stay up for as long as you want it to. As long as you have an account, it will stay up. If you delete your account, I think it will no longer be accessible. Yeah, I think that's the only thing. So I think if you're working in an organization and you want to make sure that this type of project stays live for as long as possible, what you would actually do, which is what Emily has done, is share this project with your coworkers. So for example, now I have the ability to edit her project. She's the owner, but I have, edit abilities. And so that means someone else has access to the project as well. I will double check with the team to make sure that if the owner leaves, that other people will still have access to the project too. But that would be the best way to kind of make sure it keeps going.
Yeah, and you also could unpublish any page that you create. So if for some reason you felt that you did not want it to exist anymore, that without, deleting your account, that's something you can do.
Excellent. All right. So, I clicked on Bandit Story by accident. Okay. So let's talk about generating momentum. Are you still seeing my slides okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's talk about finding and keeping your audience. So hashtags, we touched on hashtags a little bit, but I wanted to actually jump into some of the data behind them and why they're so important. Really having the right hashtags is going to be vital to creating an effective social strategy. And the data really backs this up. So tweets with one or more hashtags are 55% more likely to be retweeted. That's a huge amount. And a post with at least one Instagram tag averages 12.6 more engagements than posts without a hashtag. So just think about that. That is like a very small amount of work that you have to do in terms of thinking about the content you're posting, with like a pretty measurable impact on the amount of engagement and the amount of back and forth you could potentially have with this one post. So sometimes it seems silly, but putting a little bit of effort into thinking about what hashtags to use and doing some analysis about what's working for your particular industry type is going to be hugely beneficial over time. So increasing engagement and building brand awareness is one of the main reasons why hashtags have such power. We talked a little bit about this in the beginning of the presentation, but you're really looking to grow your reach, to find like-minded users, and to reinforce the mission behind your organization using hashtags. And creating compelling campaigns, I mean, a hashtag is a campaign. Essentially, being able to link users across multiple platforms or across multiple posts, that's going to give you a huge leg up in helping them figure out what your organization is all about and what your nonprofit is trying to achieve. So let's talk about some real quick tips about hashtags. So tip number one, do your research. This is really important. Make it a regular practice to watch which hashtags are being used by successful organizations out there, by other nonprofits and influencers in your space. You can really streamline that process by using a hashtag generating tool. A quick Google search can really point you to a bunch of free or even paid options out there. So this is an important one. I think looking at what your competitors are doing, you don't want to necessarily call them competitors in the nonprofit space, but other organizations trying to grab eyeballs and trying to find some deep pockets out there, see what kind of hashtags they're using, because that might help you find a new audience that you didn't even know you could reach before. Tip number two, be authentic. Always use hashtags that are going to reinforce your nonprofit's voice, and avoid spam hashtags that are going to feel like really inauthentic and risk your post from being found. So to avoid this trap, aim for hashtags that are going to ring true to your brand voicing goals and that you can find no more than 500,000 posts without on social. That's going to give you, if you're just using one hashtag that has that kind of reach, the likelihood that your post is going to be just lost in the shuffle is huge. So being a little more niche about it, I think, is really going to help you find that specific audience type. And then finally, tip number three, build around a community initiative. Create a feel-good initiative that your community is going to rally behind, and ask for them to document their participation using that curated hashtag. We have some examples of that coming up. So FEED, for example, is an organization that aims to battle food insecurity here in the United States. And as a recent initiative, the group encouraged followers to collect food donations by hosting educational dinner parties. I think it's a fantastic idea. Obviously, right now, maybe not the best idea, but it worked for them in the past, when we could actually be around other human beings. But back in the day, the participants were asked to share photos from their dinner parties with the tag Feed Supper. And then by the end of the campaign, Feed had raised enough money to provide 2 million meals for families in need. Of course, they did have the benefit of some really high-level influencers participating in this campaign. But think about what your community can do. Think about your goals. Maybe it's not to reach 2 million meals. Maybe it's to reach 200 meals for your immediate small community. And who can you talk to in your area that can help support those goals? So social media design. This is something we've touched on a little bit, but I did want to make sure we touched on these best practices that are really going to help you stand out on social. And you don't need a lot of resources to make this happen and to make it easy and doable. So what you really do need, though, is a plan. So we're going to walk you through some of these best practices and takeaways that are going to help you guide through this process. Images. I think images are the number one thing we've talked about. Images are really going to make your content pop. Obviously, on platforms like Instagram, that goes without saying, you need to have images, but not all people are necessarily using images on other platforms like LinkedIn or Twitter. So make sure you incorporate images into your stories. That way it's going to really grab people's attention, and think about how you can best use them too. Show, don't tell. Make sure you minimize the amount of text that you're actually putting into your content. This is going to help kind of limit that eyeball fatigue that users sometimes can get as they're scrolling through their feed. Just grab them in and then encourage them to get more information from the actual post within the content, not the image itself. A clear image, something that is really going to, excite people and make them recognize your brand is really useful. So follow up with a more descriptive post later in the article. The power of copy, though. So these are some things that we talk about that are a little more high level, like visual and content hierarchy. So some interesting things that I've learned throughout the years from the designers in our team is that your eyes are naturally going to go to the top left of an image. So that's a really great place to put the bulk of your content. And then it kind of drives down in this line. So it starts at the top left and then goes down like almost a reverse, like hockey curve. So you can think about putting your content there. Color and contrast, also really super important. Choose an overall color temperature for your post. Don't mix and match them too much because it's going to be too shocking to the eyes. Allow your text to pop. Make sure you put it on a part of the image that it's going to stand out against. Incorporate shapes to highlight copy. So if this image particularly was too busy, you could put a backing shape on that text to help make it stand out from the actual image in the background, and make use of white space. We'll talk about letting images breathe in a little bit as well. Here's just some examples of nonprofits that are using these kinds of examples through our templates. But you can see up and to the left, that's where your eyes naturally go. And we've got some really great contrast in this Wonder Dog rescue post on the right-hand side. So type is really going to help set the tone of what you're trying to convey as well. These images, for example, use type to draw attention to either a feeling or a mood. So you don't actually need a lot of copy if the type and tone is doing the talking. So this is one that I love. This is just a really great example of using typeface as part of the overall imagery instead of keeping it separate. So this is kind of like a what not to do. I just made this one. We're not calling out any particular nonprofit, don't worry. But this is a lot of copy. This is a lot of text. It's difficult to read. It doesn't stand out well. So you can see here that this is the kind of thing that I actually see a lot on social media. And this is an example of less is more. Here's just some other great examples. The text and type here are really the stars, and the imagery is what's helping to set the overall tone. You can actually make the background image darker or blurrier. That's a great tip and a much easier way to help keep the focus on the relevant information on the screen. So I think this Wildlife Conservation Fund gala over here on the right-hand side does a great job of still using beautiful imagery, but making the text and actually the brand of the nonprofit really come to the fore. That's another thing too, knowing your brand's voice before you start creating on your social presence is actually going to be really wonderful for consistency. So you may wonder, why is consistency important? It's because viewers are really going to immediately recognize your content as they're scrolling through their feeds, and hopefully getting excited about that and stopping to look and seeing what you have to say. So also, don't be afraid to start fresh on your content. A lot of younger generations, I have noticed, actually will delete their entire Instagram feeds and start fresh when they feel like they have something that's a little more aesthetically pleasing to their personal brand. You can actually take that and do it for your nonprofit if you want to. Start fresh on your Instagram. Don't lose your followers, but kind of rebrand your visual imagery on your page. This nonprofit here, Pencils of Promise, I think does a really incredible job on their Instagram page, showing their brand and showing a particular style, so that when you see their content on Instagram, you're going to know it's from them pretty much right away, because they've got that same yellow, black, and gray motif throughout all of their different pieces of content. And so that's really helpful. Here's some more examples. We've got that consistency of imagery. We've got the subtle brand color highlights, great use of user-gen content. This is another one. Hashtags can help you find user-generated content that you can promote on your own feeds. It's, obviously you want to give a call back to the original creator, but it's a really great way to kind of show overall user engagement and to encourage others to post content of their own, because then they get excited that they may be highlighted on your Instagram page in the future. So it's like creating this self-fulfilling kind of like wheel of content where you're putting content out there, people are creating content about you, and you're taking that content and putting it back into your main channels. And it starts this like, you know, wheel of life, I guess, of social media content. And you can actually do this within Spark with a premium account. We have a manage brand section that allows you to import your logo. We then look at that logo and pull out the exact text code for the colors that you use in your brand. So you can populate templates with your brand, basically ID, throughout all of your different templates and content. You can even import your own fonts and typefaces. So if there's something particular that you like to use for your content, you can use it on our templates as well. Letting it breathe, this is another one. I think a lot of us have the habit of taking a picture and just putting the main subject right in the middle. That's great, but it's not great if you're going to be adding some you know, content to the rest of the image later. So you can see here, by using the rule of thirds, you can capture her on the right-hand side and then have plenty of white space to add your text and copy to later. So don't limit yourself, basically, is what I'm saying. And if you're not a natural photographer, Spark can help with that too. You can pull in content from we've got a pretty good selection of different free image services, or Spark, rather Adobe Stock. So you can see these different examples for the same post, just with different background options, can really give you a wide breadth of different types of content that you can create without necessarily needing to start from something that you've generated yourself. All right, finally, we're going to go through some quick pieces of inspiration. The Noun project is incorporated into Spark as well. This is an amazing resource. They have over 1 million different icons to choose from. We've worked with them for years. You can use these icons for logos. You can use them for commercial content and copy. It's all under Creative Commons. I use their icons throughout all of my work, and it is a lifesaver. And it's going to make you look, you know, or me at least, look at least 10x more professional by using their icons in my content. Designinspiration.net. I'm not sure why that got cut off, but designinspiration.net is the website. You can just see a lot of different nonprofit examples and what people are doing to either create, you know, what are those called? I can't remember what those are called. Infographics, that's it. You can create infographics. You can see how they're creating web campaigns, and it's just a really great resource for getting inspired. And then our very own Behance. This is an Adobe site where you can follow different creators and get different ideas for looks and feels that you can potentially use as well. These are some tools that are going to make your lives a lot easier when creating campaigns. A lot of you are probably already using at least one of these already, but Buffer, Hootsuite, Later, Sprout Social, Tailwind for Pinterest, all of these are going to give you analytics around your content and also help you do some of that research into hashtags and what's working there. So it's important to see sometimes like what kinds of content are working best for your particular brand, and then building off of that versus, you know, different kinds of content. Maybe your users aren't as interested in videos as they are in text. So it's important to look at the overall engagement and see what's working so you don't waste time on stuff that's not getting you the type of engagement you're looking for. So overall, our key takeaways: show, don't tell. Let your visuals be the show stoppers, or thumb stoppers rather. Maximize copy. Don't overuse it in your imagery, but make it short and sweet, get to the point, and make sure you play around with type and colors and spacing to feel what works right for you. And then consistency. Curate your social channels. Make sure you have that brand voice and look that's going to be recognizable across platforms, and be true to your voice, whether it's through your hashtags or your overall social engagement. That's going to help build your brand up over time as well. So for getting started, where to start? We've got a ton of great resources over on the Spark blog. We've got playbooks, we have tutorials. Emily's going to link to our tutorials page in the chat so you can follow along. And we have tons of templates to get you started. If you go back on the main Spark homepage, and at the very top, there's a search bar, you can get pretty granular with what you're searching for. So for example, if you have a nonprofit around animals, you can search for dogs or cats. If you're doing something with the environment, searching for nature, for example, is going to pull up tons of great templates. Just get out there, start searching, see what feels right, or start from scratch if you have an idea of your own. Always a perfectly great way to get started as well. So thank you so much. You can reach out to me on social. I'm at Veronica on Twitter and Instagram, or email me directly if you have any questions at Belmont, that's my last name, at adobe.com. Thank you so much. I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions we have in the time we have remaining. I'll turn it back over to Nicole.
Amazing. That totally rocked, Veronica. Lots of great best practices and inspiration, and we have a lot of questions for you. So please, if you haven't already asked a question or at least seen what's in our Q&A tab, maybe there's something there that's on your mind, head on over. Add a question, maybe upvote for one that you'd like to see answered, and we'll start taking those in just a moment. But before we do, I want to make sure that everyone knows how to access Adobe Spark via TechSoup. So if you are a nonprofit, if you're a TechSoup member, you do have access to the Adobe Creative Cloud for Individual All Apps plan. So Creative Cloud has lots of your favorite design tools, including Adobe Spark. You'll also get Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Premiere Pro, and lots others. So the admin fee for TechSoup members is $5, such a deal for your nonprofit. And a note that it will be waived for Cyber Week, which is happening November 30th to December 4th. We'll have more info. If you registered for this webinar, you will get more information about our Cyber Week specials, including this waived admin fee. So more on that to come. And thank you, Bailey, for adding in some more details there. We'll also add in the link to our product page in just, maybe I already have it in just a moment here. Oh, nope, wrong one. That was a tutorial. I'll make sure I have the link for Adobe Creative Cloud on TechSoup. So with that, and thank you to Emily as well for helping us to answer questions along the way, let's go ahead and dive in. So I'm going to start with some questions here that are top of mind for many of us. Let me go ahead and reopen that. I might have to X out here real quick to do that. So hang tight. Let's see. One second here. There we go. Okay. Sometimes it's a little finicky. I'm getting ahead here. So let's dive in. Where did they go? Here, maybe Emily, if you wouldn't mind. For some reason, my Q&A tab is stuck. So maybe if you want to start with the first question.
Yeah, let me just look at our one moment.
Are we looking in the Q&A tab?
Yeah.
The Q&A tab. Yep.
Okay, so I've got them up here.
Oh,
so
well,
Jean says,
I'm
go
so
ahead.
sorry. There was a couple questions that I think you're right. I think that they should be in the Q&A tab. Go ahead, Veronica.
Sure. Jean says, any suggestions on how to find a volunteer with this type of expertise to help small nonprofits? So I'm assuming that you mean, like, is there someone you can find that would potentially help you with your social content? And I think there probably are. I think a lot of social media managers, a lot of freelance social media managers work with a number of different companies. So sometimes they want to have the experience of being able to work with a nonprofit too, especially if they're passionate about that kind of project. So I would check on LinkedIn. I think sometimes it's hard to convince people to work for free. But I think if they are passionate about the message and the mission that you have, if they have extra bandwidth, it can definitely be great to work with someone who does this professionally. Or if you have an intern or someone who is already working with the organization that perhaps feels a little more savvy in the social media space, getting them trained up could also be an added benefit too, and help them build up their resume down the line.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, on your social media channels, you can always put out an ad saying, hey, we're looking for some lightweight social media or graphic design help, and you can have these people work in Spark and collaborate with you. But also you could reach out to a community college or a local college and reach out to the graphic design department. There may be a college student that's really eager to get some on the ground experience for their portfolio. So that's another avenue to explore.
And there's some great answers already to Jean's question too from Deborah and Ashley, who are recommending other websites where you can find people with the right skills that could potentially help you as well. So thank you for adding in your answers also. Linda says, my nonprofit uses Canva frequently, but we have an Adobe CC subscription as well and would like to move to using Spark for our campaigns. Would there be an easy transition from Canva to Spark, or is there a learning curve? Thanks. No, I think it's actually like, if you're familiar with this type of project building, I think you're going to have no problem. I think both services are really easy for people to pick up and start to learn. Of course, I think Spark has the added benefit of having templates created by the design professionals at Adobe, as well as a lot of the different benefits that we have in terms of our collaboration with Noun Project and our free image search, and all the other great integrations that we have built into Spark. Lots more are coming soon too that I'm working on, that I'm very excited about, that I can't tell you about just yet. So yeah, I think if you're familiar with that type of program, you're going to have no problem picking up Spark very quickly.
And could you talk a little bit about the differences? We also had a couple of questions come up about the difference between Canva and Spark.
Yeah, I think they are very similar in what they're trying to achieve. But like I said, I think Spark comes with the Adobe knowledge of graphic design and just, decades worth of experience in that field. We have just an incredible number of templates that are created by professional designers, both locally and internationally, that are localized as well. So I just think the breadth of content that we have is a leg up on a lot of different services that are similar to Spark. And plus the kind of incorporation that we're building across different CC tools that are coming soon, the ability to tap into your Creative Cloud libraries, for example, your ability to share content, all of that just kind of helps with the overall workflow that you're probably trying to achieve with your organization. So that's really what I think. It's that design expertise that's in our DNA that really helps us stand out.
Excellent, excellent. I'm seeing some other questions here too. If you can revisit how you changed the fonts to reflect your organizational branding.
Sure. In fact, I can show you if you're interested.
Let's
real
do it.
fast. Let me share my screen and share. Okay, great. Let me pop back over to Spark real quick. I'm going to go to my home page and I'm going to head to brands. And so these are all the brands that I've set up just personally, some that I use for demos. Here's the Spark brand. Sword and Laser is actually my podcast, and I create all my content for our album art and our social posts. I have to, excuse me. Excuse me. So in here, you can actually go in and edit all of your different content here. So I can choose different logos if I have other alternate takes of my logo that I want to use on my content. I can add more colors to my default brand library, and fonts. So I can go in and choose other fonts, or if I have a font file that I've downloaded from the internet that my design team has created, something that I'm using in my campaigns already, I can actually import that from my desktop and then use that as my default font treatment for all of my content across Spark. So that's just a really great way, I think, of giving a lot more of a really specific and really personal touch to your content, so it feels different from everything else that's out there. I think having a default font that's yours and yours alone is going to really help you stand out. But not everybody has that. That's totally fine. So we have a number of different options that you can choose from for your fonts too.
Excellent. Let's take one more question here, as it will be time to wrap. And just a reminder, if you do have any other questions, Veronica graciously offered up her email. You can reach out to her at belmont@adobe.com. We've also included that in chat. Let's see, is there one question you see here that you'd love to answer, Veronica, before we part ways?
I wanted to mention there was a really good question earlier that I promised we would answer, which is one of our attendees wanted to know, how do I make decisions about what to post on Twitter versus what to post on Instagram? Are there any recommendations on, how to think about these respective platforms and the content that you share on them?
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. I think Twitter is definitely Twitter and Instagram both can be very visual. So in that case, they're not super different in the way that Instagram and LinkedIn probably are. But Twitter is still going to give you an opportunity to add more text as part of your overall message. Instagram is really going to be focused around grabbing people's attention with like a short animated clip or a really beautiful image post that is aligned with your overall brand look and feel, and then pulling people in. But Twitter's great because you can have those links right there in the content. So just think about what each platform is really optimized for. Twitter is great for sharing links. It's great for having conversations. It's great for, you know, viral kind of campaigns and hashtags. Instagram, on the other hand, great for sharing short video clips. If you're using Reels to share longer kind of visual video stories, that's a really wonderful way of doing it. People go to Instagram expecting to spend some time looking at content like that. So feel more comfortable to share a little more long form content on Instagram, kind of the way you might on YouTube, for example. So those are just some of the things to think about. Instagram, a lot more visual, Twitter, a lot more text oriented, a lot more link sharing. So that's kind of how I would think about optimizing that kind of content. Okay, I think that's it. I think we pretty much are done. I'll stop sharing.
Oops, looks like I might be cutting out there, so apologies. But real quick, just so you know, we do have some more upcoming events. You can check them out at TechSoup.org/community-events. So we've got some on cybersecurity, more about year-end fundraising, in addition to community forums and how to use them on TechSoup. And just thank you again, Veronica. We so appreciate you being here with us. I learned a lot. I know our audience and community learned a lot. So thank you for being here with us.
Happy to, anytime. Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you for all your questions.
And a thank you to Emily and Bailey on the TechSoup side for also supporting us. Before you head out, please take our very quick survey. You will be redirected once you exit out of Zoom, and we will also be sure to add it in chat. Again, you'll get a recording to this webinar sent to you via email, along with the slides within 2 business days, more or less. So thank you all so much again. Be well, stay safe, and we'll see you around TechSoup. Bye-bye.